Hey guys, it's the Robert Gardner Wellness Podcast. I'm here today with Christy Miller. Did I get it correct?
Yes.
I always get names wrong. When I'm teaching online, it happens all the time. So Christy is an educator in Louisiana, I believe, and I bumped into her online. I can't even. How did we start talking? Do you remember?
I think I reached out to you because you posted fish lyrics,
Oh, okay, yeah.
and I was like, "Hey, fellow music fan, fellow fish fan,
Yeah, there's not as
we can
many.
be friends."
Yeah, not as many fish fans in Louisiana generally, but it's changed over the time. So, Christy, tell the audience like a little bit about you and maybe like how you got into massage and then education.
Well, I love the question about how I got into it. My grandmother was a massage therapist. I'm a third generation
Wow.
therapist. So there was when I was in high school, there was an assignment. What do you want to be when you grow up, basically. So I was talking to my grandmother about it. We call her Gami because the first grandchild couldn't pronounce granny like she wanted to be, so she's a Gami. So I talked to Gami and asked her what she thought I'd be good at, and she told me about this great lady that she learned from, Susan Salvo, and that she really knew her stuff, and she thought that I would be a great massage therapist. So I went, and here I am. And now there's 7 therapists in my family: my grandmother, my mother, me, and aunts, uncle, and a cousin.
Wow.
So we're a very loving group.
Interesting. Yeah, that's a lot in a single family. I don't think I've ever heard of that before. Not in that same way.
Yeah.
So you essentially were raised with massage.
I wouldn't say raised because my mother actually went to school after me,
Yeah.
but my grandmother was the first. She went with her sister, and so I was familiar with it, and it just looked like something really cool that I just wanted to do. I wanted to be able to comfort people. It looked powerful in that way, just to be able to offer some support. And so as soon as I graduated high school, I went straight to massage school in Lake Charles, owned by Susan at the time. And so I was 17. So it's all that I've
Is that
ever
Susan
done,
Salvo,
really.
by the way?
It is.
Yeah.
It is. I was grateful to have, studied under her, and, I'm grateful to still call her a mentor to this day. She's been, instrumental in my every part of my career.
Yeah. Yeah,
I'm grateful to call her my friend.
Yeah, I only met Susan in person at the AMTA convention in El Paso. She's supposed to come on the podcast, I think, in a couple months. I talked to her about it briefly, so it'll be kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I originally got my license in Louisiana, and I've had, I don't know, I keep having and losing licenses in Louisiana because of regulatory stuff and, paperwork. But it's always interesting dealing with regulation from state to state. And then I don't know as much about like Susan's history either. Like I see her name around, but I don't know much.
Well, she's a powerhouse. I mean, she's written several massage therapy textbooks, pathology books. She's an educator, and she has a doctorate in education. She's really just a spectacular human and a very bright lady. I have a lot of respect for her.
Yeah. So for you, I took a quick look at your website. It looked like you were teaching cupping and some other techniques. How did you, after having such a family involved in massage, how did you get involved in education and then like what you're teaching specifically?
I just found a love for it over time. Susan actually, a few years after I graduated, she asked me if I'd be interested in teaching at the school. And so I just, developed a love for it. And it's honestly the best. I think it's the best job in the world. There's nothing that I would rather do, as a job than being in a classroom.
You like it more than doing sessions?
I do.
Yeah.
I do. I like connecting with clients. I still, am a massage therapist. I still do have clients. But, over time, my focus is shifting more toward education and in gaining my own as well. So I'll graduate with a bachelor's degree in psychology, and I plan to graduate in December, and then I'll go on to Lamar for mental health counseling. So there's just something about the classroom on both sides of the podium that I really enjoy.
Yeah, I think I was doing Thai massage, and then I just knew, like, I'm only going to be working on one person at a time unless I start teaching this. It was completely unavailable, so I was like, all right, time to teach.
Yeah.
I know it, I can do it, let's go. And have kind of, I don't know, like, I still see clients, but it's not a massive focus. There's not a lot of social media push. I'm not running ads for clients or anything. I'm trying to increase education and have teachers underneath my, moniker of Next Level Pain Relief and continue to build. There's a huge market. Massage related, like, education and business stuff is probably more interesting to me than body work at this point. And when I'm dealing with students, I'm starting to notice that they can pick up the body work itself, but because what I'm teaching is clothes on and mat based, they have a little bit more of a challenge trying to wrap their brain around, like, the packaging and marketing and sales and the way that it's different. They're like, man, this really is like a different service. And I go, yes.
As far as you asked about the classes that I choose to teach, I usually write classes around what students are asking me for. So I tend to choose things that help to save therapists' hands. So I like cupping and taping for that reason. And if the client wants it, following, evidence-informed practice, I'm not making any claims. I like cupping because it feels good. And if someone knows how to apply that method, I'll be grateful. So I usually choose those classes based on need. And then I have included in every PowerPoint standards of care for our practice. So I'll go into evidence-informed practice. I'll teach a little bit that I know about research literacy and documentation, just to make sure that people who have been in our industry for a while, I don't know that it was always taught. And I think that some people need to be reminded what the standards of care are, and to make sure that we are adhering to those and not going out of our scope of practice. So there's a section in every class that includes that, because I think it's important to make sure that people know the levels of evidence, and not everything is created equal, and at least give it a shot, to try not to, which, I've seen less and less pushback on Facebook. I feel bad for, like, Alice, and I can't remember her last name, but she was just really fighting for, Jason Erickson and just people who are trying to help people, the long list of people trying to help us to get rid of some of those old notions. And I feel like people are starting to catch on. Yeah, because of their work.
Facebook group admins get what they deserve, and I'm an admin of many groups. It drives me absolutely insane. So, the science informed side of the bodywork community just needs better marketing. Like, science in general in the United States. I was asked by somebody at the AMTA what I was most shocked by, and I went, the fact that the American public generally does not like science. And it's like, that includes massage therapists who are like, no, I want to do my healing work. And I'm like, okay, cool, that's cool. But, like, what about science? And they're like, nope, don't like science. And I'm like, you're using space technology to communicate with me on Meta about how you don't like science. All right.
I once read a quote. I saw a quote. It read, "It's difficult to get a man to understand something when his paycheck depends on him not understanding it." Yeah. And there was a time that I was very guilty of perpetuating those old rumors, or whatever you want to call them, notions. But thanks to, leaders in the industry and just being open and being okay with being wrong, being okay with not knowing. It's
Yeah, one of the worst things I can do as a former philosophy student is I was totally comfortable after years of college education going, what is the good? What is? And not having an answer. Like it's not like engineering, like you got to get this right or things fall apart. So when I'm in classes, I'll ask questions, which is not a very fun way for people to learn in America. They're not interested in my questions. Does that make sense? They're like, no.
Do you think that makes them nervous? Because they think they should know the answer to everything.
I think there's a whole mix of things, including my background and their background, where, just for an example, when I was a philosophy student at LSU, I became aware of this one day where we had a humanities requirement. So if like you were an engineer or a mathematician, you had to have a certain number of classes or courses or something. So somebody would take a philosophy class as like a one-off, and it would be like ethics or bioethics, something I was in as part of my major. And the look of like steam coming out of a guy's ears when the professor was like, yeah, you're just going to write a 3-page essay and there's not really any right or wrong answer. And they're having a conniption, and I'm like, huh? What, like, about what? And it's like, oh, well, they're engineers. Like, there's a right answer. Like, there's a definitive, that bridge has got to operate according to certain physical laws, but like, no, we're just talking about, Nietzsche and Thrasymachus, and, it's just no. I'm comfortable asking questions. And when I get to the edge of my knowledge base, I feel like Socrates just walking around the agora, just let's ask questions. Me and Plato hanging out. The students do not like that. Western education, the way it's doled out in America currently, is very like top down. We tell you what the truth is, and you regurgitate the information. It's not a place to like ask questions. Does it make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So the students are like, well, what do I do? And I go, communicate with the client. And they're like, oh, can't you just tell me what to do? And I'm like, the problem is if I choose two techniques, one technique's going to work for one client and not for the other.
Mm-hmm. Go with your gut. Communicate
with the client. That's a problem. Go with your gut. And they're like, oh, I don't know. I had Wendy's earlier. I don't know. It's just the thing about education itself. I was sort of weaned in that philosophical sort of thought experiment, and I'm very comfortable with that. But I realized that students wanted like the foundation. So I wind up teaching sequences, and the duality I get caught in is they want me to dispense the truth. So I give them the sequence, and then they go, well, this sequence doesn't fit my client. And I go, communicate with the client. And it's between sequence and improvisation. And if I teach them sequences, they want to improvise. And if I teach them to improvise, they ask what the sequence is. And I'm like, just keep working at it.
Here's both. Here's both.
Yeah. So how do you deal with students' questions, since we're in that duality between sequences and improvisation? Because the students have to have enough of a background to feel comfortable improvising. So feel comfortable, start stepping outside the box. And the foundational work they're taught in school, I never thought anything of it when I was in massage school to learn like a Swedish sequence. It was like, you just memorize a sequence, but in no way did I ever feel like the teachers are like, you have to do just this. You can't vary from this. This is a sacred sequence. And people kind of get like that with Thai massage. And I'm like, I don't think that's how that works.
Yeah. I welcome questions. I like students to feel comfortable enough to ask a question. And I like to feel comfortable enough to maybe not know the answer, but I'll help you find it. If I don't know the answer, we can find it together, or it'll be a bonus on our next test.
Yeah.
But I always disclose that I try very hard to, because anatomy's tough, teaching anatomy, physiology, patho, kines, these are tough subjects. And so I just try to stay open to being wrong, being humble about it, and trying to find the answer. And then we all know if I don't.
Yeah, like you mentioned, scope of practice, and scope of practice gets interesting because it'll change slightly from state to state based on like laws.
Mm-hmm.
And then I do with Texas students all the time. I'm like, have you guys read the law? And they're like, well, no. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you don't you don't even know what you operate under.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, I definitely like to go into that, to read, the Practice Act, what's in, what's out,
some of the
so that we'll know.
Less progressive states, I'll put it that way. That sounds good. That's a very clean, clinical. The less progressive states in the United States sometimes have some of the stricter massage laws, and they'll just confuse me sometimes. So somebody contacted me from Mississippi. They wanted me to come in and teach, so I had to do like a little bit of research, and then I had to file with Mississippi's board, and then I think Mississippi had to approve the curriculum, and it was like this ongoing fiasco. But when I looked at Mississippi's law, they specifically did not allow visceral manipulation. And the whole time I looked at it, I went, so you can't do abdominal massage in Mississippi? Like, how are you guys defining
visceral?
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like when students
or manipulation.
When students contact me and they have a question, they're in South Dakota, let's say, and they're like, I'm an NCB, TMB approved, home study, like I have home study courses online, whatever. They go, can I get credit for your course? And I go, I don't know. And they're like, what do you mean you don't know? And I'm like, there are 50 sets of laws. Mm-hmm. I do not live in South Dakota. You're only responsible for one, and you don't know. Mm-hmm. Why do you expect me to know 49 other states? My own home state, I'll tell you very quickly, I taught a class online once I got really cooking with my multicam setup. Taught a class online, and Texas does not allow hands-on instruction online. My home state during COVID never waived any rules regarding hands-on instruction and online stuff. Online CE credit is only allowed for like theory or business or something like that. Make sense?
Doesn't matter if it's pre-recorded or live?
Let me think about this for a second. So in Texas, whether it's pre-recorded or live, I think the challenge is Texas has a blanket rule. You can't teach any hands-on instruction through these cameras. Mm-hmm. It's not allowed for CE credit. Now, other states during COVID tweaked that and said, well, it's COVID. We don't want people spreading. Texas was like, oh, well, they didn't allow what I'm doing at all. Teaching online. So long story short, I taught a class online. I was teaching Thai style foot massage. In the mat-based section, a lady in Arkansas called and started cursing me out on my Bluetooth and whatever. Got pretty angry at me because I got mouthy with her for calling me and cursing me out during class, and then reported me to TDLR. So a lady I've never met, who's never taken an in-person class with me, who's never had a session with me, reported me because of something I said on the internet. And TDLR is like, are you doing? And I'm like, hold on. You have a recording of the entire interaction I had with the lady because she called during class. She gave you a copy of the recording. You saw what happened. Mm-hmm. The Texas Department of Licensing and Regulation does not allow CE online for hands-on instruction in Texas. And they're like, correct. They're like, are you teaching CE? I'm like, no, hold on. I live in Texas. People come study with me. People can take my online classes. But if they're in Texas, I'm not responsible if they're trying to file courses that they know they can't file, because there's a blurb on my website that says, listen, Texas blocks 75% of what I'm doing. like it sets a very dangerous precedent when somebody out of state can report me and get me in trouble with the Texas State Board, and they're asking all these questions. And I'm like, listen, if the Texas Department of Licensing and Regulation doesn't allow hands-on instruction online, how is anything I do online within the purview of TDLR? And if I ask that, they'll go, well, we're not at liberty to interpret the law. And I go,
it's the lawyers. It's the lawyers.
So you don't interpret laws that you're enforcing? Like, okay, guys, and in the end, everything was fine. It was just, this lady and whatever. No charges were pressed. I didn't have to go to TDLR and defend myself. But it's put me in a weird situation, because I wound up teaching online because I felt blocked by school owners and industry leaders who don't think very well of online education, and my clients are completely clothed. I haven't had anybody take off clothes in 8 years. My students are completely closed. I haven't had anybody take off clothes in eons. So I just film and photo document everything and teach online, and everybody's like, no, but you can't. And I'm like, can't what? And they're like, but you're not following the rules. And I go, yes, but I have a lawyer and I don't break the law. We don't like that guy. He's not, he's just like on the internet asking questions. We don't like it. So where were we?
We were talking about laws.
Oh, good Lord. I should have been a lawyer. I really miss my calling. If I had to do it over again, I'd just go to law school, because I love it.
You like to debate?
Oh, it's my true, if I had a true gift. I've had people argue with me on Facebook before and just call me names and tell me I'm fat. And I'm like, hey, you want to debate me right now? We'll go live on a podcast. I'll debate you right now. No scripts, nothing. Let's go. Everybody declines, of course, but it's like it could get brutal. Yeah, it's just different than I think the way most people are thinking about education itself. Again, there's this weird like top-down model. We tell you what to think, and you just regurgitate the information
and follow suit.
Yeah, me just doing something. This is how radical my curriculum was. I went, hey guys, why don't we work on a mat? And if you really let that sit, it's like a burr in your ass. They're like, but this destroys the entire found. I'm like, I know. It's like something as simple as working on a mat with somebody clothed is like, oh my God, this is crazy. And it's like,
I didn't realize you would get so much pushback from that.
Well, mat work represents less than 1% of the entire massage marketplace.
I think that makes it more interesting and fun.
It is not allowed at any major facility in the United States. There's only one facility in all of Austin that I can think of that even allows mat-based work. And Austin has Austin is the cool city, right? The progressive city in Texas. There's 1.6 million people here. There's one facility.
Wow, I was not aware of that.
Yeah. Well, in Louisiana, how many mat-based practitioners?
I don't know.
And it's like every day students come into my subscribers group and they're like, do you know anybody in Massachusetts? And I'm like, good luck. Like, you got to do some Google searches, because again, it's made me a bit of a pariah just working differently. It's not really socially acceptable yet. It's not esteemed. Does it make sense? It's not like, ooh, the mat work is like something advanced. They're just like, I don't know, that's weird. I do massage. I don't know what that is.
Do you have any interest in doing tabletop, Ty? Or you?
I still teach it, but the only reason I teach it is because it's like training wheels to get them to the mat. Okay.
Yeah, I'll be taking one of your classes.
Yeah, Yeah,
Sounds like a lot of fun.
the therapists across the board, what I see is they think I'm anti-table, and I go, no, hold on. You haven't understood my teaching. I'm pro-mat. There's a difference. And like, I allow table work. Your industry doesn't allow mat work. And they're like, what? And I'm like, okay, did you learn mat work at school? Are you allowed to practice it in the facilities you work at? Are educators promoting? No. Like, your industry is anti-mat. I'm pro-mat. That's about as simple as I can make it. Now, once I added doing crazy mat work, clothes on with 4 camera angles, teaching interactively live during COVID, I went, oh, we got some bigger issues. So, are you primarily running your own practicing clients and then teaching as a side gig?
I feel like everything that I'm doing is part-time. So I have a great little building, and we have, I would call it a co-op. Everybody owns their own business inside. So I have a massage room. I think there's 9 therapists total. And then we also have a person who does waxing, and then a person who is an esthetician, and she also has this great therapy float tank. So one with the salt water, and so I manage that. I guess everybody's managing themselves; they have their own businesses. But yeah, I do a bit of massage, a bit of teaching, and even I don't think I've ever taken more than 12 hours in a semester. So it's a lot of things to fill out a day, but everything's pretty much part-time. Mm-hmm. And then at the massage school, the way that it's the Louisiana Institute of Massage Therapy, and there are 3 classes that go on at a time. So it's every other weekend, so alternating weekends. So that's 2 classes. And then the class that I teach is the weekday class. And so that's just a 7-month course. It's a 500-hour course. Most of the teaching that I do there is, from October to March. So it's kind of seasonal in that way.
Are you, and let me be clear about this, you don't own a massage school, do you?
I do not.
Okay, but you teach at a massage school in addition to providing CE?
Correct.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, man, you are spread out.
95. Yeah. But everything's part-time, and it's just perfect for my ADHD brain.
Yeah.
Just to keep everything interesting and keep me occupied.
Yeah,
I love it.
The one thing I didn't do was start teaching in core curriculum. I very much felt like CE was going to allow me a certain degree of freedom to ask those questions. If I go into core curriculum, it's going to destroy the school. Like they're gonna seed a rebellion from a bunch of anarchists who are like, down with the table. It's like weird. Yeah. And then the teaching process, I think because I'm a teacher, I'm interested in this. Like, I have deeper emotional bonds with the students who are trying to wrap their brain around what I'm teaching and helping clients and working in a different way. The teaching process, is that primarily what you love, is sort of the connection with the students to be able to see them grow and develop?
Absolutely. And I love watching the connection that they build with each other. So first day of class, we take a group picture. Everyone's occupying their own space. And by the end, by the last class, the last group picture, everyone is hugging and they're on, they've gelled. And that is the goal of every class that I teach, is to get them to connect with one another, to teach, empathy for one another. And I think my classes in psychology have helped me as a teacher in the classroom because, well, not only am I sitting there as a student watching an instructor excel, or maybe not, but maybe sometimes as a student, I struggle. And so I have more empathy toward them on the days that maybe they're not able to give their best because of it's something that they've got going on.
Yeah.
There was a fly, I swear.
Yeah, I think about my core curriculum sometimes. Like I tease at students because I graduated in 2002 and I got a B in anatomy. So
it's hard.
The way I dealt with school, because I was a very dedicated student, but not a morning person. And students, or I should say teachers in school, never had any problems with me because I was, I don't know, intelligent and engaged and wanting to learn. But going back and like, I never thought in a million years when I was sitting in that school, like I would be teaching CE classes years later. Like didn't even, it was just like, I'm just here learning massage, so I get my massage license. Like I had no notion of that at all.
Well, I guess I was led mostly by Susan. She kept, suggesting things. Hey, have you thought about going to get your degree? Have you thought about this? Have you thought about this? Well, okay, let me try it. And so I've just taken steps forward. And, if it felt good, I kept doing it. And I've been teaching since 2005. And with anatomy, there's always something more to learn. I've just never lost the passion for it. New groups of students come in and just to see people light up. Sometimes students don't think that they can do it. Yeah. And I love watching them excel. It never gets old.
Yeah, man. Students and like the questions they ask, because I'm teaching CE, and you can tell they're trying to wrap their brain around like, how did you know to do? And I go, I've been doing this for 20 years and Kate just told me. I'm like, yeah. Like I'll hook into something, go, Kate, you like more towards the shoulder or more towards the spine? And she's like, oh, towards the spine. I'm like, cool, you like want to go up towards the head or down towards your feet? And she's like,
yeah.
Oh, down towards my feet. And they're like, how did you know to do that? And I'm like, but she just told me.
Yeah. What did your last therapist do that you enjoyed? What did your last therapist do that you didn't like? Okay, great. Let's do that. Or let's not do that.
Ooh, man. Students, at the point I'm at right now, students are having a business problem because they're not confident enough in mat work to just go whole hog. So they're like, no, but my clients want massage, and I went to massage school. And I go, so why don't we give them a better service for pain management? And they're like, no, but they're asking for massage. And I go, why don't we give them a better service for pain management? And they're like, no, that's not what they're asking. I'm like, it's not what you're promoting. Like, if you promote the service you want to deliver, if it is mat-based, the clients will buy it. Like, I worked with Kristen for 4 years, and it was hilarious because she went to On It recently, which is this crazy total human optimization gym. And she did a little demo with Wendy, and they were giving away little 20-minute sessions, I think. And Kristen freaked out. She's like, they love it. And I'm like, yes.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah.
That's what we're doing here.
That's not new, Kristen. Like, of course they love it. It's like, I keep telling her, I'm like, we don't have issues with the clients. We have issues with massage therapists who don't want to change. Like, fundamentally, it becomes like a completely different practice once it's mat-based. Once I take effleurage away as the foundation, the therapists are like, what do I do? And I'm like, you should follow the sequence. And they're like, oh, but this is like really long. And I think that's just going to be an issue for the rest of my life. I don't see how I avoid that. I just keep teaching, clarifying, making shorter sequences, making it easier for the students, more sequential, succinct. And you just make more video, continue to show it. It's kind of like, I don't know. A dishwasher still washes dishes. It just does it in a different way than using your hands and a sponge and a sink. That's all.
I like to try to encourage students and help them to gain a little bit of confidence by saying, hey, these techniques have been around a long time. they're not going to be any better just because I'm doing it. I think that focus and intention, like there's something about maybe techniques aren't they all work in exactly the same way, maybe. So if that were true, then maybe focusing more on your intentions. But what's your intention? What did the client ask you for? Trying to focus on that might be more important. So I don't know where I was going with that. But.
The students, the constant discussion I have is, I want you to stop being a service provider and start being a problem solver. And they go,
not an interactor?
No, but the clients are asking for massage. And I go, I was a philosophy student. What is massage? And they're like, no, but Robert, everybody knows what massage is. And I'm like, really? I don't. And I have 3 licenses in Texas. It's like the service provider as an artist, they're kind of almost, the clients are allowing them to almost force the students into a box where it's like they want to deliver this specific service that the client is asking for. The client is never going to understand the full expression of what bodywork can be, nor should they be expected to. That's for the artist.
Yeah, they don't need to. They want to have a good experience, so we try to give them that, whatever way that means to them.
Yeah. Like I talk to students, conversations in class get brutal. I'm like, guys, do any of you ever ask yourselves how I created the business I created? Because it was not because of my stellar good looks and award-winning personality.
Sure it is.
It's because the work is effective. Anybody can learn it. Anybody can do it. And, social skills help or whatever. But it's this interesting thing because you're trying to get them to think outside the box. You're trying to get them to, promote different services. Like if they're having a problem with what I teach specifically, like they don't understand the mat thing, I go, listen, let's take a branded service like Watsu. Watsu is available. Massage therapists know that Watsu exists. There is no major, to my knowledge, chain that offers Watsu in the United States. Aquatic therapies aren't even on the map. And if I ask why, it's like, well, infrastructure, and they'd have to have a pool, which is much harder to set up in a commercial setting. It's, more, there's a very strategic thing, like you got to have a pool that would allow you to do that. They kind of understand that. And I'm like, so what about mat work? Less materials, less laundry, cheaper, quicker, faster. It's got all the advantages of chair massage. It's completely clothed. You can film and photo document everything to promote your practice. I'm like, where's the mat work? And they're like, Robert, this is crazy. And I'm like, I know, I'm certifiable. If we go to a counselor, I'm totally certified. You can just stamp me crazy. It's great. But it doesn't mean that my discussion doesn't have veracity. It doesn't mean that the work is less effective. It's just a model that the industry is not currently allowing at the moment. One of the most interesting things for me was to see pre-COVID, about a year before COVID, Stretch Lab and Stretch Zone started to open up everywhere. And I was like, this looks just like Table Tie. And all these stretch facilities, yoga teachers, personal trainers are all doing the stretch service, and massage therapists start to get angry and go, well, they don't have a massage license. And I'm like, they're not doing massage, they're doing stretch. I'm like, no, they need a massage license. And I'm like, not according to my Google research. It's like, that was the terrain I kept telling therapists to pick up and use. And they kept saying, but no, my clients want massage. And it was like, they left like this huge chunk of real estate, around that the yoga teachers, personal trainers, and people picked up. But when I have conversations about it, it gets heated real fast. Massage therapists don't like it, but it's like, I don't think massage law really does what they think it does, if that makes sense. What have you found? Are you traveling from state to state?
Yes.
How,
Next to my love of teaching, the next best is travel. So we
travel.
have an RV that I've been using to take. I've been to Albuquerque a couple of times to teach at a massage school there. In June, I'm going to go to Abita Springs, and I have Roan State in Nashville, near Nashville.
What is it in
And it's
Nashville?
just Roan State. I think it's a community college.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So yes, I've started to do more traveling and teaching, and that's I mean that's the fun part. So the
Yeah.
goal for every journey is to, of course, teach, meet some new great people, and see something I've never seen and taste something delicious.
There's an interesting thing I noticed as I started traveling to realize there was a sort of massage culture, and the massage culture changed from state to state and region to region.
What do you give me an example?
If you go west and get towards the coast, you're going to hit more loamy and more water influenced sort of body work. If you get into different regions that have rules about like abdominal work, some like local schools don't teach it. So there's just like small variations in massage culture itself that I think are
Mm-hmm.
unexplored. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
So depending on, sorry, go ahead.
if you go to Arkansas, the hot springs, have an effect on the culture around the massage and the stuff around it. And it's just those little things that I find super interesting, where Asian styles of body work unfortunately get a little bit of a knock in the industry because of concerns related to like human trafficking and prostitution. So if you wind up on the West Coast again in larger cities, you have a larger Asian immigrant population, so you're getting more
Mm-hmm.
shiatsu, Thai massage, other stuff. There ain't a
Mm-hmm.
lot of it in Central Texas. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. So I understand. So depending on the region, the laws, the culture, the style changes from place to place.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, like there was I looked for this video because I thought this was glorious. So it's like, it ain't my style, but I just was like totally blown away. There was a guy who he did Lomi or some Polynesian style of work, and there was a video that came out, and I've looked for this video and I can't find it. If anybody's out there and you know where this video is, send it to me. He was a Lomi practitioner, and I call it Lomi because that's the closest name I have to whatever Polynesian art. He had apparently studied in Hawaii. He had studied in some of the other Polynesian islands. He was working around Miami or something, somewhere in Florida. And he had a young lady on his table, looked like she was 19 and nothing but a thong. And he was oiled up and had a sarong on. He was covered in oil and he was doing this dancey, flashy. He did this Harlem Globetrotter stuff at one point. She was on her back. He lifted up her arm and his arm was oiled. So her leg slid down his arm and he ducked his head and like went to the other side. At some point he's doing the work and like the table lit up underneath. Like one of those cars, you know what I'm saying? And I saw that and I was like, gold. I was like, that guy's going to make $1 million. Every woman wants to be that young lady on the table, and every therapist wants to make the money he's making. And massage therapists were so angry because it was too sensual and it over-sexualized the work. And I go, like, it's part of his marketing. He does this Polynesian style of work. It comes from a different culture.
Mm-hmm.
I thought as a marketing thing, it's not what I would do, but I was like, it's a total win. Nobody pays attention to my videos on YouTube because it's not sexy. Like, I had somebody write me the other day and they're, I don't know, like commenting on me being fat or whatever. And I'm just like, here we go again. The challenge is like, what do people want to see? like what's interesting in a social media environment and context. I thought his work was amazing. Like if you were looking for that style of work, I thought he did a great job of promoting it. The level of like, you know, entrepreneurial that it took to get your table to light up underneath, I'm just like gold. I was cinematic gold. Like, you know, therapists were complaining he charges $50 more an hour than anybody else in town. I'm like, and he deserves it and probably gets it. That thing about marketing, advertising, packaging, that stuff with massage culture is like different from region to region. I've seen therapists argue about the Esalen Institute and nudity, and I'm like, have you ever been to Esalen? And they're like, no. And I'm like, oh, dude, it's like, can't even. That's like not even part of the United States, man. That fell off in the ocean years ago. Sauna culture, Turkish baths, things like that. It's like in other countries and cultures, the way they deal with stuff. Like, have you seen those crazy Indian barbers doing that crazy head massage? It's all rapid with the oil.
I've seen the one where it's slow. Is it called shower dara? I don't know how to pronounce it.
Yeah, I think that's more like Ayurveda.
Heavenly.
Yeah, and I don't know where the crazy guys I see on TikTok, because they're like going in somebody's ear and they're like real rapid. But it's like contextually, I think you wouldn't get that in the States. You know, it's like you're blending disciplines. And to give you a quick idea, I went to Greece and Turkey years ago as part of a exchange. I went overseas to study, and I got to Istanbul. We went to the oldest hammam in Istanbul, and some Turkish guy took me and scrubbed me with a loofah and laid my ass out on a marble and like cracked my neck and did all this stuff. And you're like, this is not the United States.
Yeah.
And it's like, was it a cleansing ritual? Was it a bath? Was it a massage? Was it a chiropractic adjustment? It's like
all of the above.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like contextually, it's a little more compartmentalized in the United States, and it affects the way people look at, you know, culture itself. Like the culture of nudity at Esalen. When people are like, that's weird, those people are naked, and I'm like, hold on, have you been to Esalen? And they're like, no. And I'm like, okay. So there is the baths where the massages go down, and the baths are right near the hot tubs, basically the hot springs. These are naturally fed hot springs full of sulfur. You go sit in them, they're awesome. The first day you go out, it's a little strange because you can take a shower and then you go naked. And if you're like me, you very timidly run and jump in the hot tub, you know, to cover yourself up. But after you're there for a month, every day you go to the hot springs.
You were there for a month?
Yeah. So the goal is, if we get the next level pain relief trademark, if we get the registered mark, I'm going to contact Esalen and try to do like a month-long retreat there, so that students can come in and stay, and we can, like, you know, expand on the work in like a retreat context. And that's essentially what I did with my teacher many years ago. Is I was a teaching assistant, so I went, hung out for a month, saw these people coming and going at the Esalen Institute. It's got a lot of crazy history with it. It's a very wonderful place. But the thing about the hot springs is, like, the tubs are right here, the massage place is over here. So your therapist will come and get you. You're in the tubs. You just stand up naked, walk over and get your massage. But it's so interesting because there's a sort of cultural context at the facility. Like, you get used to being completely naked with someone and then going to the lodge 15 minutes later and having a conversation with somebody completely clothed. It's like, it's like, again, it doesn't even feel like part of the United States. Culturally, it's like something fell off in the ocean years ago. And those cultural contexts are like sort of what we're dealing with in the massage industry. Like, there is a massage culture. And the massage culture wouldn't even open enough at that time to like allow stretching, though that has changed because of Stretch Lab and Stretch Zone, other larger, you know, corporations, businesses that are having stretch therapy now. So it's just interesting. Like, I'm seeing lots more in video. I'm seeing lots more movement and stretching than I did, say, 5 years ago. Like, it seems to be growing. And all of the massage championships, have you looked at those?
Yeah, that looks fun. I mean,
Yeah.
I wonder if they're really trying to see who's the best or just being more playful. I think it's turned some people off to hear the word championship.
People are making money. Let them go make money. It's
still a place for people to network and learn and ride off a vacation.
They'll contact me and ask me if I'll compete, and I go, yes, but I will do the most intentionally effective and boring session you have ever seen. I will hold one spot for 5 minutes and communicate with the client. Like, I will intentionally lose. And they're like, Robert, you're mocking us. And I'm like, yes. It's like, it's totally cool that other people love it and want to have a competition, but it just seems a little strange to me.
Yeah. I think it's strange if someone takes it really seriously and, I am the best, I think that would be strange, but just go into have fun and have a new experience and just see people kind of showing off their craft, I suppose. If you look at it in more of a lighthearted way, I think it could be fun.
Yeah. And I don't know. It was just like the AMTA convention. I've only been to another one years ago that was in New Braunfels here in Texas. So going to El Paso and then a totally different area of Texas and teaching was kind of interesting. And again, just cultural shifts and changes from like region to region. El Paso felt a bit more like almost New Mexico to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There was a slightly different vibe than what I thought it would be.
Mm-hmm. I was scared when I went to New Mexico to teach because it's a very spiritual area, Native American population. And I was afraid that maybe more of a science-based perspective would not be well received. And so I was very careful by how I packaged it, where this is from my perspective, but it's not, I'm not trying to stomp on anybody's beliefs or anything. I'm actually welcoming your opinions and your experiences if you want to share with the class. And I was surprised that it was, well received. I think it's just in the way that you present it, that everybody is welcome. Everyone's opinion is important and we want to share. It brought the class together.
Yeah, I've learned to be less contentious. This is the less contentious Robert. I don't bring it up a lot, and the major issue that I've seen is teaching Thai massage. They're expecting some sort of energy work, and I keep asking questions about science, and they go, no, we don't want science. We want Asian magic. And I'm like, you want Asian magic from a white guy who grew up in South Louisiana who teaches the body work from some people from Southeast Asia? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, energy work. Let me have a beer. Let's sit down and talk about this. Energy. What is energy? And they're like, no, Robert, no. I'm like, what does Neil deGrasse Tyson got to say about this? Bill, not a science guy. What about science? What about double-blind research studies? And they're like, no, we want magic. And I'm like, ooh, man, you people vote? You're raising children? Good God.
It would be easy to sell, though, wouldn't it?
The science?
No, the magic. It's easier to sell. I see why it's so appealing, why it's tempting to a lot of teachers.
It gets dangerously close. One of the things I find interesting is if you talk about cults. So Austin is it an hour or two from Waco? So occasionally those will come out of class, like people talk about cults or something, and cults are generally looked down upon because there's a cult leader and then the followers. But the way education is dealt with in the West seems to be very top down. Like the guru tells you what to believe, and then you give up free will and thinking and do as you're told. And I have a bias sort of against that. And then you come to find out that students go to the massage school or go to an educator like me, and they kind of just want me to dispense the truth to them. And I feel very uncomfortable with that situation because it feels a little culty to me. And people would joke with me. They're like, "Oh, Robert, you're like a cult leader." And I'm like, "Okay, cool. We got a cult." I was like, "There's tax exemptions. That's great. We like that, you know." And they're like, then they go, "But Robert, you could have a compound." And I'm like, No. You don't have compounds in Texas. We burn those to the ground. No. You can have a ranch, but you do not have a compound in Texas. Do not call your place compound. Like, this is not negotiable. You're never calling anything I'm involved with a compound. The challenge is I ask questions because I don't know, and I'm comfortable with that sort of Socratic ignorance. I'm trying to get the students to look at science-based education and just ask better questions, to be a little more inquisitive, but I also don't want to force them. Like, part of the reason I taught Send Lines in my first Thai massage workbook was I wanted students to be able to leave my class, go study with someone else, and be like, "Oh, these are those Send Lines he was talking about," without them being shocked. Does it make sense? But it created this weird thing because as I continued teaching, they were like, "Well, what about the magic lines?" And I was like, "Oh, that was just a map that the teacher gave the student and said, go do 10,000 sessions." And they're like, "No, but they're like magic lines." And I'm like, "No, those are a simple map that a teacher gave to the student." And they're like, "No, but the loam and it runs through the sin and, you know, this magic." And I did this at AMTA because I taught a Thai style foot massage class. I made this mistake years ago. I taught a Thai style foot massage class and called it reflexology. The students in class got angry because I wasn't going to teach them how to stimulate the liver through the feet. And I learned and changed the name to Thai style foot massage. And at the AMTA convention, I said, and I quote, I said, "In Thai massage, it's loam and sin. In Ayurveda, it's prana and nadis. And in Chinese medicine, it's meridians and qi. Which of those holds up to scientific scrutiny?" And some student loudly outside of my field of vision said, "All of them." And I went, "That's not how science works." Now, what we're doing here with the feet is we're going to mobilize and stretch the plantar surface of the feet while we deliver some pressure right here. And I just moved on because I'm not here to debate it, but I'm trying to like slowly open brains. And what I found out during COVID is the American public doesn't like science very much. It was a rough spot in the industry.
Yeah, I try to avoid those, because people get upset. So that's what prompted me to include standards of care, to include research literacy, to show the pyramid, the hierarchy of evidence pyramid. Yeah. I feel like it helped me to not have a lot of that kind of bickering about who was right. And okay, I'm willing to receive that. Let's find an article that supports it, and how would that measure up to this one? And it really helped. I feel like people do want to. They want to know. They want to. I don't know. I think they want to share, but just anyway.
Yeah, there's a thing, and it's a little bit like that duality between teaching a sequence and improvisation. You get stuck in this because they'll say they don't want a cult leader, but then they kind of go, "Well, can you just tell us what to think?" And I'm like, I don't feel real comfortable with that at all. Mm-hmm. That's kind of contrary to even how I interact in the world. That doesn't really, like I'm a massage educator wearing an Eazy-E t-shirt. Like, I ain't typical. Students occasionally, they'll say this. They're like, "Robert, I don't know. You, like in your videos, you curse." And that's like, it makes me a little uncomfortable. And I'm like, it's easier for me to turn on the cameras and be authentic. And that way, when you come to class and find out I curse, it's not a surprise. You don't report me to TDLR and say he's using profanity. Like, I don't have to deal with any of that. Like, you know that the curse comes with the price of admission. It's like, I didn't want to have a job, I guess, if you want to call it that, where I was constantly putting on a facade.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that thing in education is just to ask people, why does this work? Because they think it's like I'm teaching magic techniques, and it's like, no, I'm just manipulating soft tissue. Like, this isn't, it didn't even fundamentally all that different on a table. It's like, I choose to use a mat because I think it gives you more access to more tools, but it's like the massage culture is interesting to me because the more I understand it, the more I want to like crack it open and create new potential for the students to be able to interact in. And that has its own like marketing challenge. It's like, I always feel like an anarchist when I run into any school with this device and go, global distribution. And they go, yeah, we don't allow that here. People are naked. And I go, oh, okay, whatever. Do you go into other schools in Louisiana and teach, or are you just at your kind of your home base?
Recently I went to a school in Lafayette, just to, a friend of mine was teaching there and just invited me to go and show the students what, a little bit about cupping and hot bamboo massage, which is, being requested quite a bit these days. That's really fun. It doesn't get as warm as the hot stone, so you don't have that burn risk. But they're still warm and they feel nice. So I went there. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Lafayette and New Orleans are my two favorite places in Louisiana, though I grew up in Baton Rouge.
Yeah, my heart lives in New Orleans.
Yeah, New
I
Orleans
have family. I have family that lives down the bayou from Venice and Buras. And my grandmother would come to pick me up every summer. And so when I saw the Superdome, you know, just there's great things to come. So even as a kid, because it was a fun summer of hanging out in the pool at my grandmother's house. So so being near New Orleans has always signified some fun. Yeah. Something fun about to happen. I love it.
Growing up there, you didn't like culture, right? Like, I didn't realize how like immersed in Louisiana culture I was until I moved to Pennsylvania near Lancaster County, where the Amish are. And I remember being in my Honda Accord, being 22 years old, and being behind an Amish buggy, and I was like, "This is not Louisiana, man."
Yeah,
oh my God. I was like, these people are apple pie and butter all day long. Like, ain't no gumbo, ain't no blues, ain't no jazz, ain't no funk. Like ain't no Gree. What is going on? Ain't no Dr. John, ain't no meters. You know, where's the brass band?
Exactly.
Totally different. Yeah, that's where one of my bigger goals I tell people is I kind of want to be like Tony Bourdain, but add the component of body work. So I go to Oaxaca, Mexico. I live there for 6 months. I eat the food, document the culture, go to the tequila distilleries, and find the local curanderas and see who's doing massage in Oaxaca. Like, what exists there?
Oh, wow.
Because I've never seen
idea.
anybody do it. And then it's like, okay, now let's go to Egypt. Now what's going on here? Saudi Arabia,
fantastic.
Or wherever in the world. Like, that's part of the dream. And it's like the same thing I said about massage culture in the United States. It's a little more standardized across 50 states. But once you get out of the country, I suspect it changes pretty radically.
That would be a very cool thing to do. That sounds like a dream. Yeah. Good idea.
And then I can't debate people as much, because once they start speaking to me in Spanish, I have to reel it back in.
Well, it sounds like it would be a wonderful journey.
Yeah.
And a cool show. What
do you hope to do in like years to come? Like, we're post COVID. or at least what I like to call the main the main shock of COVID is over. What do you hope to do like in the next 5 years?
I hope to have attained that master's degree I mentioned. Do a bit of counseling, AMTA conventions, national conventions, more travel and teaching. Maybe to have a book published. I'm working on a case study right now on cupping and taping. Someone told me that there was a gentleman who had gone into PT because he had fallen. He was an older man and he had bruises all over his legs. Well, they put a bunch of tape on him, I guess to help him maybe feel a little bit more stable, or I don't know why they put the tape. But when they took it off, the bruises were gone where the tape was. So a lot of people don't like cupping, and I don't, unless the client thinks that the bruises are beneficial, that's never my goal to leave a bruise on a client ever. And I tend to not leave them, but someone brought it to my attention. Well, what about this experiment? What if you did a case study where you cupped both sides of a client's back and then just taped one side, and did the tape help with that post-cupping petechiae that can be left? And maybe that becomes part of safe practices of the use of cups. So I thought, so I'm, still working on that, but, continuing to write classes. One that will be, that I expect to be approved soon by NCBTMB is my class on massage and transgender population.
Oh, that's an interesting, that's an interesting topic.
Yeah. So, the class is written, it's been submitted, and I just got an email from them a few days ago requesting a timeline. So I expect it to be approved soon. And I would like to take that class everywhere, so that, to help break down some barriers so that everyone has access to quality care.
Yeah, the massage practice itself over the years really forced me past, I don't know how to say this. Being from Louisiana, I looked at music and food, anybody's culture. I want to know what you got to eat and what kind of music you got. And I think that says a lot about me having grown up in Louisiana, that I even think that way. So when I deal with people from a bodywork sensibility, it allowed me to reach out to people across sex and gender lines. It was like if somebody was a Muslim and, whatever, and had like a totally different cultural background, I could still connect with them using touch in a way that was like culturally, appropriate. I run the Thai Massage Jam, and I always think about the Thai Massage Jam going to like Muslim countries and thinking like, well, I think in some countries, like men and women don't mix the same way. But then at the Thai Massage Jam, like if women wearing hijabs were like working on each other, they could probably be allowed to do that. And I always wonder, what does the Muslim Thai Massage Jam look like? And I'm like, to me, that's amazing because it's clothes on. So it allows that sort of, interaction. So little things about culture and gender stuff, I'm very open. Like I just don't really, I'm very, let's say, what's the way to say it? I'm socially progressive. Sounds very politically correct that way.
Well, I just have a true love for people. I like to connect with people. I like to find things that we have in common. Like for instance, you and I were born 5 months apart. I thought that was kind of cool. I noticed some things that you post. I don't know if it was something with some kind of 80s movie, and I was like, I bet we're the same age, and sure enough we are. But I drape everyone the same. I guess it's called gender neutral draping. So in that respect, the sex of the person, the gender of the person is not really relevant if everybody's draped the same. But I like the class is about what the common pronouns are in the LGBTQ community, what gender dysphoria is, and talking about different top surgeries. So a masculinizing surgery or feminizing surgery, what that might look like with the top surgery, and then different protocols for each stage of the wound healing process. Post-surgical massage. So that's been a really good class that I'm really proud of it. I'm really excited to present it.
Have you taught it before?
Yeah, taught it a few times, but I'd like to take it to AMTA.
Yeah,
I think it's worthy.
Have you looked at any online education for expansion at all?
My classes are either taught completely online or blended learning. So and that way a student doesn't have to. Oh, you're fine.
So we are back after I rudely cut you off.
Oh, no, you're good. Yeah, my classes are available online, in person, or blended. So I have all of my stuff loaded on Google Classroom. So when you purchase a class from my website, a link is emailed to you.
Oh, nice.
And so everything's on there where you can, it's got videos and a PowerPoint report, exam, evaluation, all of the stuff. And then you just email me when you're done, and I send you your certificate in a reply email. So, yeah. Louisiana does allow CEs to be completed online.
Yeah, each state, like different rules. I don't even know. Does Louisiana allow like hands-on instruction online? Like as long as it's, in my case, if it's nationally approved, I think they do.
Yes, they do. Yeah. Louisiana, if Louisiana approved, Louisiana board approved, they do. They allow in person or online.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a huge proponent of online education, but the thing that's been the most challenging post-COVID is I never imagined that the thing I was doing for supplementation became so big that it ate my business, where I'm having a problem getting back to in-person education. When I talk to students about it, they're like, what? And I'm like, how about I turn on cameras 5 days a week, 2 hours a day, 52 weeks a year, and give you another 500 hours of footage every year? And they go, what? And I go, I could just live stream 2 hours a day, 5 days a week. You have no travel costs. Well, how much does it cost? I'm like, $7 a month. And they're like, how the hell would you? I'm like, well, if I had 10,000 subscribers, I'd make $840,000 a year. And they're like, wait, what? And I go, cool. So you want me to come to Louisiana? Because you can't force them. You just like continue to provide stuff and just work with them where they are. But the online education, I was already starting or doing it pretty heavily before COVID, but COVID definitely bumped the dial towards online. And I've had such a success rate teaching from 4 camera angles live interactively through Zoom that the students freak out and they're just like, oh my God, I don't have to travel. And I'm like, yes. Like it drastically reduces like the cost of, education. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. My friend Kelly Mentor told me about you a few years ago, or maybe a couple of years ago, about your subscription. And she loves it. She's a big fan of yours. And I think that's really cool. They can complete all of their hours and have access to these videos. And she said you upload new things all the time and, have all these tips. And I just think that's great. I love it.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I just continue using the technology where it's at, and just like anybody else, I just grow in my concept, if you want to call it that, of what I can potentially do and how I can supplement to be able to help students. So I just keep adding things. It's a little bit like, again, the students, they can learn the body work, but I think they have more of a challenge with the business. So they would kind of go, I don't understand, why do you have a podcast? And I go, why do I have a podcast? And they're like, yeah, but like you don't make like money talking with and interviewing Christy. And I go, guys, so we have a podcast. This will go on YouTube. I promote you, you promote me, your students know about me, and vice versa. And I get to like put out more social media content so people know who I am. Like, do you deem me more professional because I have a podcast? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, that's why I have a podcast.
Yeah.
It's like,
and I
this is
noticed,
business.
that you're near 100 episodes. Is that right?
Oh, yeah. I'd have to go on the Anchor, or it used to be Anchor. Now it's Spotify for podcasters. I'd have to go check. Some of the like seasons and episodes are confusing, the way it's like organized. But yeah, I wouldn't doubt that we're getting close to 100. Did you know that somebody told me this years ago? The average podcast only has like 5 episodes or something.
I didn't know.
Because I guess people start podcasts and then drop them. My saving grace is a really ongoing tenacity. I'm like, even if you do it poorly, just keep making podcasts and just keep going.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Your 100th show should be with someone like, I don't know, what book do I have right here? Robert Sapolsky or somebody.
Who's that?
Robert Sapolsky, I think he is he presented at one of the San Diego Pain Summits, maybe the first one.
Yeah.
I think he's a neuroendocrinologist that taught at Stanford or somewhere. He studied these. I just love this guy. He's a great storyteller, and so that's one reason that I love him. But he's a brilliant man. He spent I don't know how many summers studying the effects of stress on, I believe it was chimpanzees.
Interesting.
And so the more dominant males had very high testosterone, but low, I think, cortisol, vice versa for the one that everybody picks on. And so his research, through his research, he discovered many things, but one of his books is called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers.
Interesting.
So what the book is about basically is long-term effects of stress on health, and why don't zebras get ulcers? So they live in they have a very dangerous life. They're grazing, lion comes in, takes out one of their herd, and 10 minutes later they're back grazing again. And so they don't worry about this lady that cut us off in the store, 2 weeks ago, and just ruminate like I tend to. And so he would be an amazing person to interview for your 100th. It should be someone spectacular.
Yeah, the goal was to get the podcast going and then branch out into other interests. One of my more memorable podcasts was I had a gentleman on who was talking about Texas history, which I don't know a lot about because I grew up in Louisiana, so we studied Louisiana history. So having him on and talking about Texas history and whatever else was super interesting. But I can hear people, much like my poker playing and liquor reviews, they're like, what does it have to do with massage and body work? And I'm like, nothing.
Nothing. But it's interesting.
It's because it's fun. And here's what I think is interesting. So like poker stuff and like liquor, they're like, what? This doesn't have anything to do with body work. And I'm like, but once I go to Oaxaca and start going to the distilleries, then you're going to go, once I'm sitting at that, poker table in Oaxaca, hanging out with some guys speaking Spanish, playing, then it'll make more sense contextually. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I love the sharing and exchanging of information that podcasts allow to like take new ideas and promote it to an audience.
Yeah. I think it's great what you're doing.
Debatable, but depends on who you ask. So the long-term goals, like we were asking about, like the next 5 years, do you see yourself moving more and more towards like continuing education and then travel? Is that more like specifically what you're hoping to do?
I think that I'm always going to have clients. I'm always going to teach at the massage school. or at a massage school. I mean, the LIMC, as long as they'll have me,
Yeah.
to keep my game sharp. And because I just love it so much, I'd be sad if, I think I'll do it until I can't anymore, until it doesn't make sense to stay, because I'm so busy, traveling and trying to manage everything that I've got going on.
Oh.
But I'll do it as long as I can, because I love them. I love everything that I'm doing. I love it equally. I'd be sad if I didn't have school. Even after I get my master's degree, I may continue, because, I just enjoy the experience. It's the best thing that I've ever done for myself, and it feeds everything that I'm doing. I never would have had the courage to write a class. I never would have had, it's just given me a lot of confidence. So yeah, I'll do them all till the wheels come off.
Yeah, I'm very, I have a strong work ethic, which I find interesting. Like, people talk about whether they get writer's block or whether they're a self-starter. And I go, self-starter? Like, I remember years ago living in my home at the time with a roommate, and it was like Saturday night at like midnight, and he was like, "Robert, are you working?" And I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Robert, it's Saturday night. It's midnight." And I'm like, "Well, it sounds like somebody doesn't have hopes and dreams." Like, nobody's making me do it. Like, I love it.
It's fun.
Yeah, to me, yeah. So I think like, conversations about work-life balance can get super weird. They're like, "Robert, you're too immersed in your work." And I'm like, it's like, I'm not telling everybody to do what I do. Like, I don't think it would work for a lot of people, but it depends on like what your long-term goals are, what you're trying to accomplish. Even with, like, I don't teach in core curriculum for very specific reasons. I don't think it would work for me, but it's not something where I burn bridges. Like, I try to keep friendly alliances, I guess, with other educators and school owners and professional organizations. I try not to burn bridges, even though my opinions might be contrary to the mainstream industry in some ways. I don't really know. The whole thing, like online education, for instance, seems to be controversial in core curriculum specifically. And I think there's some fear because they don't know, like, it's not just massage education. Education itself as an entire industry, from, preschool to, graduate level college, is like changing because of internet-based technologies. So it's kind of this weird thing. As somebody who went to school and, in the 80s, and that was what you dealt with, and that's how it was at public school in Louisiana, it's really hard to think about access to global data at students' fingertips. Like, when I look at a Chat GPT, for instance, like, what are people doing to write essays now? Like, I don't even know how educators deal with that. The modern world is just completely different than when I was playing Atari as a kid.
It was the best day ever. And what's it going to be like with these VR headsets, and where maybe everyone will have one and we get to teach with those? Maybe there is the gloves that we put on, you can actually feel a person under your hand and teach online that way. How cool that can be.
Yeah, we've already started looking at like 3D cameras and stuff to be able to figure out if I could set up a virtual classroom that way. What I'm doing now is good enough, and I think pretty cutting edge for the industry, but I don't see the technology slowing down in any way. So it's kind of interesting to look at. And again, it's like, I think there's a larger tendency in the public to engage in some sort of fundamentalism. Technology is changing so fast, people want to hang on to truth with a capital T. Like, they're starting to freak out that nobody knows what's real anymore. Like, the fake news, on and on and on. And it's like, it's because people are so bombarded with information in a way that just wasn't available with Encyclopedia Britannica when I was a kid. Like, TV went off at night. there were 5 channels. It's like as things have continued to expand, it's just this never-ending onslaught of information. And then what do you choose to believe? Like the whole world seems to be in a very different space intellectually. Probably dealing with things that frankly we have never dealt with before, so there aren't really scripted solutions to some of the stuff we're discussing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Then for you, the school that you're at, do you own the school?
I don't.
So you just teach there?
Yeah.
Are there a host
Yes,
of
I
other
do.
teachers?
Yeah. Each of the 3 classes that are going on has its own group of teachers, which we all support one another. If someone needs to take a day off or something, we're always there to help out. And it's great to meet the other groups.
Yeah.
Cohort.
Yeah. The massage community, other than doing like a modality day in a school, I've mainly stayed out of core curriculum just to focus on CE classes, which has been more my cup of tea to continue expanding. It's been super interesting to continue to put out information, and like we're looking at partner massage classes online, things like that. Maybe expanding past massage therapists at some point and teaching the public directly. And teaching different audiences. I find it difficult to sort of switch gears in my head because like the public has a different knowledge base than yoga teachers, personal trainers, massage therapists, and then devising curriculum for each group that's slightly different based on their needs is a little more challenging because I'm used to dealing with people who already know the anatomy. You know, when I talk about the bicep or the tricep, they have a general idea of origin insertion.
Yeah.
So I don't know why we didn't discuss this earlier on. We did mention fish very briefly. How did you get into like jam bands?
Whenever I moved to Lake Charles, I'm from a little town. I mean, you lived in Baton Rouge. Do you remember Mamu?
Oh, I know Mamu, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm from Mamu. So whenever I moved to Lake Charles, I came here to go to massage school, like I said, and so I moved to Welsh. I had family there, kind of helped me get on my feet, and ended up getting a job at a gym, and so I moved here. So I didn't really know anybody, and so I just kind of a lot of people my age at that time they were in college, so I just tried to make friends wherever I could, and I ended up finding my people, and they were musicians. They were going to see shows. They were at festivals, and that's where I found my crew. And so they introduced me to Government Mule and Widespread Panic and Grateful Dead and just all of these amazing bands and just all of this great music. I just fell right in love with it.
Yeah.
And just kind of took off with that. And I'll see Panic in Huntsville in July. I just saw My Morning Jacket in Jackson last week. And I had never seen them before. I've been hearing about them through other friends, but when they played Victory Dance, I was like, all right, you got me.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I sort of dropped out of the scene for a while, living in Texas and working on my business. Not because I lost interest, but just because I was busy, dealing with other things. But it was pretty heavy in college. A lot of fish, string cheese incident, and Keller Williams for a while. There was a period there from like 97 to 2000 or so that was pretty heavy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fish, fortunately, is like I tell people, like it's weird because I love fish, but I almost bring up fish at parties just to hear people complain. Like, I hate Fish. I hate Fish fans. They're horrible. And I'm like, yeah, tell me about it.
What do they not like? The long jams, or I think
Yeah,
some people like the song to end at 3 minutes 22 seconds. Let's
yeah.
get on with it. I'm like, no,
Structure.
I never. Take me somewhere. Take me
Structure.
to a
Yeah,
place.
it's like they want, and it's like I don't know. It's interesting. I got away from the scene for a while just because I was busy, and then I go back to it and I see certain things, and then you realize, like, man, Big Cypress was 23 years ago. Like, you're like that old deadhead at this point who's talking about that show he saw in 1970 or whatever. It's like it's a different scene. Like, the technology has changed and whatever. The thing about Fish is I felt like the Grateful Dead was a little bit more relatable because it was roots music. Fish never, in my opinion, they never tried to be something they weren't. Like, they were influenced by roots music and maybe added some bluegrass and stuff here and there, some barbershop quartet. But when people would talk to me about Fish, it was like they didn't like the fact that it kept changing.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, yeah, this piece sounds like the Red Hot Chili Peppers, but this piece sounds like Frank Zappa, and this piece sounds like, like orchestral music or something. And when people would ask me, I'd go, listen, Fish is a jazz quartet that plays rock instruments. They're kids who grew up in New Jersey at the mall and listened to Jimi Hendrix. They had different influences. They're East Coast kids. They have a different background. I love it because it's improvisational. Like, I loved prog rock and kind of what they were doing, still do. But when other people hate it, I also understand why, if that makes sense. Like, it definitely stands out like a sore thumb. And much like the Grateful Dead, I think the real problem is not the band and it's not their music, it's their fans. Their fans are super annoying. Because you find somebody who likes Fish, and that's what they're going to talk about at the party for 2 hours, and some religious experience they had on acid at some show. And it's like that same thing is like the Grateful Dead, to me, in their demeanor, were very different than their fans.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's like the Grateful Dead to me were, sort of like West Coast anarchists, essentially. Totally different influences, as far as roots music. I could understand why somebody could get the Grateful Dead much faster than they could Fish. Fish was like, it's just a latter era. It just in different musical influences that just don't lead towards like roots music. And there was nothing about Fish to me that was like, same as the Grateful Dead. They weren't trying to produce like the seminal album. This was not the Eagles.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you never wanted to hear the same song twice. The people who kept saying,
but if you did,
yeah, the people who kept saying
different.
It changes. The thing that was cool was, to me, it was like orchestral music. When I was in band in high school, you'd have like an A section and a B section and an A section again. Like, they would revisit a theme. I loved that about Fish and the Grateful Dead, that they would go through changes in a song.
Yeah,
for other
sandwich
people,
other songs.
They're like, the song is 15 minutes long. What the? And I'm like, oh, because once you understood the structure, then you knew, okay, this is the structured piece of David Bowie. Here's where the solo begins. Here's where the improv begins, and they step off. They're using it as a springboard for improvisation. And for me, it was like, some albums are nice, but the experience was always live. It was always
Absolutely.
like an adventure. And I think, like, I went up to New York in '97 for a series of shows at Madison Square Garden to see Fish. And the friends and family I was staying with were like, you're seeing the same band 3 days in a row? And I go, yes. And they're like, is it the same show? And I'm like, no, they probably won't even repeat a song for those 3 days. And they're like, what? I mean,
right. I mean, that's what I always loved about Widespread.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I've seen Panic, I think 80 times at my last count.
Wow, man, you could tell some stories.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen them at Bonnaroo, I've seen them at Vegas, I've seen them at Red Rocks, and we're basically traveling, seeing the world, watching our favorite band,
Yeah.
and
When
so all of the every vacation that I used to go on was centered around where they were, and so it was an experience around an experience.
yeah.
You were talking earlier about roots, and Panic is like Southern rock,
Yeah.
just and they just speak to my soul. I just love them.
Yeah.
And
When did
I love Fish. I love other bands.
When did you
to
start
me, that's
listening to
home base.
Widespread Panic?
In the late '90s.
So when Hauser
late
was
'90s,
still
same
around?
time that I did
Yeah.
get to see Hauser's last. So we did some Texas shows. We did Bonnaroo, and then we did Red Rocks, and I think those were Hauser's last.
Yeah.
They were of his last shows. So yeah, I was lucky enough to be able to see him.
Yeah.
But I love me some Jimmy.
Yeah, I never went crazy about Widespread. Like, it was never, like, not even really in my top 5, but there was something about them. Like, when people would ask me, like, Fish, I'm like, it's a jazz quartet that plays rock instruments. And they're like, Widespread, I'm like, it's Latter-day Allman Brothers. Like, as a cliche. It's Southern rock, and they're like, oh, okay. And the album for me was Ain't Life Grand. I still put Ain't Life Grand on regularly because I think the album is just this perfect snapshot of like a time and a place. And again, remember I said moving to Pennsylvania?
Yeah.
I'm not lying. I was driving down the highway in Pennsylvania, listening to Ain't Life Grand, and I was like, I had this weird, I'd been there a month. I'd been in Pennsylvania for a month. And I had this weird revelation driving down the highway, listening to Widespread Panic. And I was like, Robert, you were Scot-Irish by ancestry and you burn in the sun real easy. But culturally, you were black. It's like you grew up in the goddamn South where this shit is just everywhere. It was such a stark contrast, like driving down the highway, listening to this Latter-day Allman Brothers Southern rock, and it was like the context for where I was at was like New England. Like it had a totally different like vibe, culturally. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you've seen them a few times? Panic?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I saw him at UNO Lakefront Arena many years ago with Hauser.
Yeah, those are always good.
Yeah, that might have been the only time that I saw them. I've seen.
It had to be Halloween.
Yeah, I've seen Government Mule in several different incarnations. But yeah, I think Widespread was only that one time live, and I don't know. It was like there was only so much time, so I just never dedicated a lot of time to like bootlegs of them, for instance, and like digging through Widespread fans to find out more seminal shows of I don't know. So the hardcore fans, and that's the thing people don't get. It's like, well, no, but there was a show in '97 at the Madison Square Garden. It was 12:29, and they did the Antelope at the end, and the improv was great, and the way the room moved, or once people start talking about that, they're like, God, I hate Fish fans. But that's the thing that fans remember. I mean, for instance, you've seen Widespread, a lot of times. Like, do you have one or two like favorite shows?
Yeah.
Where it all came together?
Absolutely.
See, and every jam band fan does.
Yeah. I mean, Bonnaroo, they were playing Tall Boy. Dottie Peoples comes out and sings Testify. And so there's something, the Holy Ghost, just the Holy Ghost. I mean, it was like nobody was playing at Bonnaroo at that time. So at the same time as Panic, nobody else was playing. So all 80,000 people were jumping up and down and like singing, somebody ought to testify. And she had it, man. I'm telling you, it was spiritual. It was like it was church for me. And just even my heart is racing just thinking about being back there again. It was wonderful. Yeah. That was the number one But there's been many, but that was the one. She got me.
Yeah, so many, like, somebody was asking me about this, like remembering certain people, and I remember certain friends, not from like these ultimate, spiritual experiences, but from just some random conversation, friends that are long gone. And you just remember this funny conversation you had in a car one time. And the jam band shows, you can never figure out like what's going to stick, what's going to be the memory, both good and bad, that like sticks with you. But I can think about it, and there's some that are huge concerts, like Big Cypress with 100,000 people there, and there's others like I remember seeing Keller Williams at Tipitina's in New Orleans, and the way you can put yourself, because nobody was there. I mean, there must have been 20 people in the whole damn thing, and I stood right in between the speakers at this focal point where you could see, like, you could feel the sound coming from both sides at the same time. This was before Keller was using, this is 98 probably. It was just him and a guitar. And it was like, to me, it was like seeing Neil Young solo. Like, it was just like hard to explain all these years later. Keller's still around kicking in various incarnations, but it's hard to explain like the small tiny shows you've seen to the large things, and how like certain concepts or certain like feelings will stick with you. Like, you get excited describing that moment, where I'm hearing it from the outside, not even familiar with the song itself.
Yeah, it's an experience. Sometimes it happens in a large venue, sometimes a small one. Just like you said, you never know what's going to hit you. But yeah, a lot of the best memories of my life have been either watching live music, Panic or otherwise, or centered around what we're about to do, or having what we just did.
Yeah, I can become a critic very, very fast, and it's really interesting to see like they talk about Fish, I think before the hiatus or whatever, and they're like, Fish, it's like Fish 0.1 or 0.2 or something, like it's a software update, and they're arguing about different eras, and it's like, I'm just not an old head who's like, this was so much better in 98 when I started, I'm just like, just let people enjoy what they enjoy. Like, why does it matter? It would be like, I don't have any problem with the intellectual discussion about Widespread Panic pre-Hauser and post, or Government Mule pre and post Alan Woody.
Right.
Like, I think it's interesting to discuss, but it's not something that I care to hold in any kind of religious sensibility, if you will.
Yeah, it's just your preference.
I gotta do work while I'm working. People are like, can you screenshot? Yes, here you go. Yeah, it's super, super interesting to think that bands I've listened to have been around for, 30 years. And to think about the way that I have gray hair now. I'm older, than I was. Also, music itself, like we talked about educational shifts. When I started listening to jam bands, it was by trading tapes for blanks and postage in the U.S. mail. Now, most bands are like streaming their own concerts that you can just, buy and purchase. A lot of that technological distribution, I even wrote articles about the Grateful Dead and Fish and the way that they were building a cult-like following through video distribution, which is essentially something that I modeled, but for massage education. Where it was like, why not just record the whole class and give it to them? Everybody was like, no, they're not going to pay for class if they can get it for free. And I'm like, are you sure? It's like,
smart.
It's the same thing. The tapers, before the band started just recording their own shows, the tapers were just forming like an underground like marketing wing for the bands to be able to give the tapes to friends and such, and spread the good word, so to speak. So it's been interesting to see the shifts in technology and how it's influenced the scene itself. because there used to be the shows that got away that nobody had. It was a rumor. Did somebody record this, or does it exist? And that so much in 2023 just doesn't seem to exist as much anymore. The shows don't escape.
Yeah. Because we have our computer in our pocket.
Yeah. And getting to a point where I got into Fish first. I never saw the Grateful Dead. I've seen like Dead and Company and a few side Rat Dog, a few side projects. Because Jerry died in '95, and that's when I graduated high school. So I didn't have any inkling. It wasn't until '96 or so that I started listening to Fish. And then it was like you kind of went backwards, because some guy would send you an extra Grateful Dead disc, and you're like, "Who's this? I listen to Fish. What is this Grateful Dead thing?" And then I listened to them, and I almost had a deeper affinity for the Dead almost quickly, even through recordings. And the more I heard Jerry Garcia Band, and the more I heard Grateful Dead shows, I was like, "Oh wow!" And I was sad. I was like, "Man, I'll never be able to see these guys like play." But what I never really understood was the fact that the influences they had like blossomed this whole like jam band scene in a sense. Like it wasn't, I hate to say this, it wasn't really gone. It was kind of like lamenting that I'd never see Jimi Hendrix live, knowing that, you know, Jimi Hendrix influenced all these other guitarists, the Stevie Ray Vaughan or whoever, and continue to expand.
Yeah. Yes, I couldn't agree more.
What are you excited to be able to go catch and see as far as music is concerned? Anything upcoming?
I'm really looking forward to Panic in Huntsville. I'm going with a friend of mine. We're taking the RV. We're gonna stop in New Orleans and visit some friends, and I'm sure see, you know, someone, hopefully George, and then we're going to go off to
George
Tennessee.
Porter Jr.?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I knew who George was, but if you're not from Louisiana, people are like, George? Who's this random guy, George?
He's the mayor. So, yeah, and then we're going to go off to Nashville and see some more friends. And so we've got, you know, lots of traveling and music coming up.
Nice.
But, yeah.
Cool. So we're up on close to 2 hours. We're about 15 minutes shy. Do you have any closing thoughts?
Well, I just wanted to thank you so much for including me and for inviting me to join you today. It means a lot. It really does. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
And I'm a fan of yours, and so I really appreciate being included. And yeah, if there's ever anything that I can do, you know, to help you or whatever, please ask me.
Sure. Yeah. If you ever want to be on the podcast again, something comes up, you need help, you want to discuss something in particular, just let me know. I just do these with a wide range of people to continue to like network and communicate with people about massage related stuff. The fact that we had like jam band history was kind of interesting because I don't normally get a chance to talk about that.
Yeah.
Well, cool. So probably above you is your website, and then below you is your social media follows. You guys go ahead and follow Christy wherever you are on social media, and I think I will talk to you again soon.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you guys so much for tuning in to the Robert Gardner Wellness Podcast. Appreciate you.